Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Gripe, the show for short, sweet reviews of new release movies, plus the one thing that annoyed me the most. And today I'm going to be talking about Independence Day Resurgence, and there will be spoilers. There will be lots and lots of spoilers. So for those of you who are too young to remember, Independence Day was this big summer blockbuster movie that came out back in 1996. Basically an alien invasion movie where they blew up monuments and everyone cheered when they blew up the White House. This was right in the smack dab of the 96 election season, so of course people were pretty much kind of where we are today, where watching the White House blow up is probably not the worst thing. But anyway, it was I mean, for its time, Independence Day was quite fantastic movie. It was actually one of my favorite movies for a while when I was a kid. I watched that movie a lot. It was just entertaining. It was fun. It had great characters, a decent story. I mean, granted, it was just a simple alien invasion movie. But we always kind of wanted a sequel. It's like, there's hope. Now, Independence Day could stand on its own, but getting a sequel, probably not a bad idea. So here we are 20 years later, and we get a sequel, Independence Day Resurgence. And just as like a quick, gloss over the plot. Basically, the story takes place 20 years after the events of the first Independence Day movie. The aliens, are basically gone, but Earth has beefed up their defenses. They've used the alien tech that they recovered to, kind of gird themselves against the possibility of another alien attack. So everything is kind of set up that they're, in case the aliens do attack again, they're ready for them this time. And so the story starts where something strange happens on the moon, and this ship appears, and they think this is the aliens, so they're ready to show off their brand new tech, and they destroy this ship. When they recover something from the ship, and they're not exactly sure what it is, so they bring it back for testing. When they do that, though, that's when the real threat arrives. It's the same aliens from before, only this time they brought a much bigger ship, and definitely it's much more advanced than it was before. So, as the tagline says, we've had 20 years to prepare, but so have they. So then the aliens basically just tear through Earth's defenses. They land this ship that's 3,000 miles in diameter on the surface of the planet and basically start drilling for the planet's molten core. And that's when, the humans start to stage what what sort of resistance they're going to put up against the aliens here. The logical step, is obviously to do what they did last time, send planes in, attack them with small fighters. But obviously that doesn't work. So they have to come up with a different plot, which in this case, because this ship actually has kind of a queen versus just this, central computer mothership, they have a queen that they're going to try to draw out and attack, which is exactly the plan that they, hatch. And so there's a big firefight in the desert, Area 51, once again. And in the end, the humans are victorious and the aliens leave. And that's the end of the movie. And it seems like I might be missing pieces of the plot, but no, it is really just that basic. The whole story can be summed up in probably a paragraph. I'm just going to get it out of the way right now. I thought this movie was atrocious. This movie was absolutely terrible. And I'm going to tell you why. So, when the first Independence Day came out, it wasn't exactly a great movie. You go back and watch it, it hasn't aged particularly well. But it was something, at its time, was pretty remarkable. It was actually a pretty interesting movie. And one of the things that actually helped it was not just the visual effects, but also the fact that it wasn't just the aliens attack, kill everybody, let's attack back, yay, we win. There was actually some, character interaction, some character building, some, they actually put some focus on individual people and kind of built them up and who they were, which, it made you kind of enjoy the characters. Bill Pullman was the president, Jeff Goldblum was the, crazy scientist who knew, Judd Hirsch is his father, Will Smith is the hotshot Marine pilot who, ultimately saved the day. And you kind of get this interesting interaction of these characters, how they all come together to fight this alien threat. Whereas in this movie is almost like a parody of the original because no one seems to, see this alien threat as a big deal. It's like, well, we've got our defenses, so the president, played by Stella Ward, just says, let's attack them. And it doesn't work. The attack actually fails miserably, and the aliens just destroy all the defenses. It's like, okay, so we'll just go to Area 51, we'll cover it, we'll regroup, and we'll come up with a new plan. All right, so we got a new plan. Let's send in the planes and destroy the Queen. So they send in the planes, nothing works. They get destroyed and captured. It's like, all right, new plan. Let's saving our best plan for last because we don't know it's the best plan. There's no like peril in this movie, whereas in the first movie there's actually the sense that humanity could die. They're destroying all these major cities. Humanity could very well die, but there's absolutely no urgency in this movie, where even the ship, which is 3,000 miles in diameter, and I'm going to get to that in a second, that is controlled by a queen the size of Godzilla, and there's no like fear. There's no like urgency of like, well, we actually might not survive this. There's a ticking clock of when the alien drill is supposed to, get into the core and steal the core. But even that ticking clock is just kind of like an afterthought until it gets down to like, oh, we only got 2 minutes. Let's hurry this fight up. There's no real peril, and there's never a point in this movie where I think humanity is not going to make it. There's no point where I think that humanity is actually their hopes are gone, because you have characters like Jeff Goldblum who are just like, I've got this idea, let's try this. You got they brought back Brent Spiner for some reason, even though his character supposedly died in the first movie, but no, apparently he was just in a coma, and his entire purpose in the movie is probably just to be comic relief, because he just plays this mad scientist the entire movie. I don't even remember his character from Independence Day being that like memorable, but in this movie they made him like this insane, Walter from Fringe kind of like just mad scientist, and it just gets extremely tiresome after a while. Will Smith did not return to this movie, and in fact, at the beginning of the movie they pretty much established Will Smith died somewhere in between the two movies. But his son is now, kind of the hot shot, in charge of, he's like the hot shot pilot. But so is Liam Hemsworth, and they create this like really silly feud between the two of them to create some kind of tension. But even when, aside from I don't know the actor's name, but when Will Smith's son punches Liam Hemsworth in the face, that's pretty much the extent of their feud. After that, then they're bros, they're good, they're friends. That's it. That's the extent of any conflict that they create between any of the characters. All the characters work together. They just and they all show up at the same place at the same time for some. How they can go from New York to Area 51 so easily in this movie, and even that one. So okay, I'm going to talk about the ship, because I have a lot of key gripes with this movie, but one of them, like one of the biggest key gripes of this movie, is the fact that, okay, they established that this ship that lands is enormous, like way bigger than any of the ships that they had before. The ones before were about the size of, a downtown urban area, so like 10, 15 miles in diameter. So, pretty big ships, but not like, earth-shattering ships. This one, they say, is 3,000 miles in diameter. So, just take into account the fact that this is 3,000 miles in diameter, and somehow one of the legs. I'm gonna back up here. When it lands, the ship, the first city it destroys. There's not a ton of city destroying in this one, but they definitely do destroy, a couple of cities, and one of them happens to be an Asian city, an unnamed Asian city. We can assume it's something like Beijing or Shanghai or something, a coastal, Asian city. The city is destroyed, and at this point, the ship is pretty much in its landing pattern, and is ready to just kind of hit the earth. When it does land, one of the arms destroys London, one of the arms destroys Washington and New York and all that stuff, of these, basically these these legs that when it lands, and yet most of the second half of the movie takes place in Area 51, which is in New Mexico, and somehow they're like right near the ship. They're like somehow right by the ship. So when you put into perspective 3,000 miles, the Atlantic from the east coast of the U.S. to Europe is about 3,000 miles there. So this ship, which is allegedly 3,000 miles in diameter, for one, managed to cross the entirety of Asia in just like a little, very low landing pattern before it finally landed over the Atlantic, which they show none of that. They just assume, oh, it destroyed this Asian city, now it lands in London. It's just, did they just like hop over the rest of that span between London and Beijing? That's way more than 3,000 miles, I'll tell you that. And then to call this movie a sci-fi is a joke, because science fiction implies at least some basis in science or math. And in this movie, there is absolutely none of that. There is no science, no math whatsoever. And so this ship that they land on the planet, that's supposed to be this giant, massive thing, there's no physics to it. It's either way bigger than what they said it was, or way smaller. Either way, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And then on top of that, so here's me kind of playing the strategist for a minute. So their whole plan is that they want to destroy the Queen, because the ship is controlled by the Queen. They need to kill the Queen in order to, basically send this ship back to home base, which again is one of those, like, it's just too easy to work solutions. This advanced alien race has been destroying planets and stealing molten cores and all that, but apparently all it takes is killing one person or destroying one ship and everything is ruined. Everything is destroyed. Any civilization that's their solution is probably not going to last too long. So their solution is to kill the Queen. Okay. So again, back to the ship. The ship is allegedly 3,000 miles in diameter. If I were this, a smart person, and the Queen is the most important figure on this ship, the last thing I'd want to do is to put her in a position of vulnerability. Now, on a 3,000 mile in diameter ship, where is the most vulnerable place? One of the ends, one of the edges, anywhere there. Apparently, that's exactly where she is. They just look at a heat signature. Oh, there she is. She's right. All we have to do is just fly into this little phalange that's over on the side, and we're good. We got it. It's good. And that's exactly what they do. And of course, they fail because, well, it can't be too easy. But the fact that it's that simple, just to go in there and we're gonna get the Queen that way, and that'll take care of everything. It's way too easy. So these aliens don't really have a very solid plan. Not to mention, in the first movie, their goal was to attack cities and military installations. Basically, take out any possibility of resistance. Here, they just land the ship, and that's it. There's no actual attack to wipe out any human resistance, because obviously the humans fought back before and were successful. If they had 20 years to prepare, you'd think the aliens would actually look at that and say, so we just need to amp up our game. And if we have a ship that's 3,000 miles in diameter, chances are the humans aren't exactly going to last long with the weaponry that we could pack on that thing. But apparently they just send out, a handful of ships, and that's good enough to protect everything that they're doing. It's, like I said, it's way too simple, and because it's so simple, there is absolutely no peril. There's no risk, no fear that the humans are not going to succeed here. Okay, here's another key gripe. So, in the first movie, there's no, explanation to why the aliens come. They just come to destroy. You're not sure exactly, it seems like they're there as almost like a scouting to just, kill off, humanity, to do whatever they need to do. So in this movie, they add kind of a purpose. They're looking for the molten core. Okay, I can buy that. But for some reason, they add in this whole idea of, well, anybody who's come into any kind of significant contact with the aliens has these visions. So like Dr. Oaken, Brent Spiner's character, he's got these crazy visions. Bill Pullman, his character, apparently he had these things with the aliens, so now he has these crazy visions with the aliens. And, this African dictator who they bring into the story for some reason, he has all these crazy visions because he's been fighting this one ship that landed on the Earth for the last 20 years, basically. And in these visions, it's just it's always such convenient timing, or it's the inconvenient revelation that something is going to go wrong. Like when they're attacking the ship, Bill Pullman wakes up out of his coma and is like, wait a minute, it's not going to work. They're waiting for us. It's a trap. So these visions that just came out of nowhere and as somehow relevant to the plot are also just exactly at the wrong moment, they happen like 5 seconds too late or something. And it's just it's such a silly thing to add in. And the worst part is that the whole thing, it's like there's like a symbol that they're all like freaking out about. It's like, have you seen this symbol? It's a circle with a line through it. Like, it's like a circle with a radius. That's it. That's what this symbol is. Like, I'm all for like coming up with like cool like symbology and stuff like that. But when it's something that just like stupidly basic, it loses any kind of significance. It's like, I've seen this symbol before. It's like, yeah, I've also seen, the arrow in the FedEx logo. That doesn't mean that it's a prophecy. So, again, they're just throwing these just like random things to try and build this universe up. But all they end up doing is making this whole story all the more incoherent. The writing in this movie is atrocious. Not just like the cliche dialogue between every single character, but just how simple the story is and how unintelligible the plot gets once the aliens show up. It's like, all right, the president, the first thing shows up, the president's like, I don't know what it is, but let's blow it up. I don't care. You sure, Mr. President? Yeah, let's do it. Boom. The aliens show up, the president goes underground. It's like, should we attack him? Yeah, let's attack him. Let's just, boom, let's do it. The president has absolutely no pause. She never even questions anything that comes her way, and she ends up dead, which is another key gripe I have. So, okay, I have a lot of them with this movie. Like I said, there's a number of characters that they brought back from the original trilogy or the original movie. So they brought back Bill Pullman, they brought back Vivica A. Fox, Brent Spiner, Jeff Goldblum, Jed Hirsch. So there's a few characters that they brought back. A few of them they brought back just to kill again. Like Vivica A. Fox. Her character is a doctor or something. They're really not sure. But she's working in a hospital and she has a white coat, so we'll say a doctor. And basically when the aliens arrive and attack, her hospital is basically right in line where that phalange on the ship is going to destroy them. So she grabs this woman to help her get her baby safe. And they get to the helicopter, and she does it. And then as she's putting the baby on the helicopter, she falls to in the rubble and dies. And her son, who Will Smith's son's character, is basically there watching this happen. He watches his mother die, and it's this. You would think that it's this moment that is just this really emotional, strong moment. It's not. She just disappears into the rubble, and that's it. There's a mention of her a little bit later when Dylan is talking to Liam Hemsworth's character, and they're like, it's like, I know what it feels like to lose family. I know, bro. I know. That's it. And then there's no more, that's it. That's all there was when it comes to watching a guy watching his mother die. Then let's go to Bill Pullman's character. So, in one of the most ridiculous moments of the movie, when they're trying to decide who is going to be the sacrificial lamb who's going to draw out the queen, he says, I'm going to do it. There's only one pilot for this job, and it's me, in a just Bruce Willis Armageddon type of moment. And he goes out and does it. They manage to trap the queen with a defense thing that, I'm going to get to that in a second, too. They trap the queen, he goes in there, and basically they blow up her ship. So Bill Pullman just dies, and then that's it. It's just like, attaboy, Mr. President. That was it. There was no, real, emotion to that scene. The only character who dies that gets any kind of an emotional scene, any sort of, actual, a moment, is Brent Spiner's character's friend, this other scientist who's been basically knitting while Brent Spiner was in a coma. That's the guy who we give the dramatic moment to, apparently. That's the guy who matters. Not the president from the first movie, not the president from this movie when she dies, not Vivica A. Fox when she dies in front of her son. Nope, just this. I don't even remember his name. Apparently he was in the first movie, and I don't even remember him. That's how memorable he was in the first movie. But he dies here, and, Brent Spiner has his moment. Just feels, so emotional. That's the character they give it to, which can just tell you how either bland the rest of the characters are, or how bad they are at creating a narrative around the people who actually do matter. Now, I'm going to get back to that. The moment where they trap the queen. So when they trap the queen, what they do is they create basically the force field. So in the Independence Day, they have the alien ships have this like force field that they have around them that protects them. And they've taken that technology and they've miniaturized it so that they can create this like basically a force field bubble, kind of like what are those things in Phantom Menace? And so they create this bubble. Bill Pullman goes in there and blows up the ship, and that's supposed to be the end of it. Aside from the fact that when they blow up the ship, it's just like a split-second scene, so you really don't even get a great effect for it. You just see a boom, it's just a little pop, and then it's done. But here's my problem with it. So apparently they have this technology of being able to like put a force field around, just like create a force field, and they're able to do that from just like a truck, like a Humvee. That Humvee has enough, it can carry enough power for them to create that. My question is, with all the technology and advancements they've made, why can't they put that around the entire freaking Earth, or at least create something, a shield on the outside of the planet to prevent this from happening in the first place? But apparently that would have actually worked, so they didn't want to do that. They wanted to give the humans a little bit of a challenge. But so I mean their technology is like it's almost like they prepared, but they didn't think it through. They're just like, hey, we got better guns and better ships now, right? Yeah. But they didn't actually think it through of what they actually could have used. The biggest advantage the aliens had in the original movie was that force field. Like on their ships, they shot nukes at it and it didn't break. So apparently it was a pretty important thing. Now, when Bill Pullman destroys the Queen's ship, the Queen isn't dead. The Queen is actually a gigantic version of the alien, basically. Like Godzilla size. It really reminds me of the aliens or the monsters from the Gareth Edwards or whatever his name was, the recent Godzilla movie, basically. And she goes on this rampage fighting Judd Hirsch in a school bus, because for some reason they had to put Judd Hirsch with a bunch of kids in a school bus right in the middle of this firefight. And so she's going after that. She's going after the pilots who are trying to attack her. But then she figures out now she knows where she needs to go. So aside from once this turns into a monster movie, then it becomes let's fight and kill the monster kind of thing. So they throw in this whole subplot of, the first ship that they destroyed is actually carrying this sentient being that is trying to, recruit technology and strategists and people who are going to destroy this alien race that is going around destroying other planets. And basically, once the Queen has it, the Queen is going to know the location of the, secret planet and, go and destroy it. So, for some reason, they have this thing in an underground bunker that is probably only about 5 feet underground, because it doesn't take much for the Queen to just pretty much break through the ground and there it is. Boop. So, Area 51, this place that has some of the most advanced technology and a prison for other aliens, the best they can do is probably about 10 feet below the surface to hide the most valuable thing that they could possibly have. If a lot of this sounds inane and silly and stupid, it's because it is inane and silly and stupid. This movie is incoherent throughout, and the whole thing is treated as a joke. They try to make a lot of humor. As soon as Judd Hirsch comes on, it's just constant old Jewish man jokes. Brent Spiner is the mad scientist. Jeff Goldblum is Jeff Goldblum, basically. Liam Hemsworth tries to be the cocky pilot. But there's no one to latch onto in this movie like there was in the first movie. There's no one to latch onto as like a coherent character. The story is just a mess. Just by the end of the movie, all you can do is laugh at how silly it is. And probably my biggest gripe about this movie is that they had 20 years to make this movie. And one of the things that you can get away with after 20, 30 years is pretty much making the same movie over again and calling it a sequel, which is exactly what they did. That is such a weak way to operate, is to basically take the original story, make it a sequel, but just put a couple of different elements in. Just because they changed a couple of things here and there doesn't mean that they actually changed the story. The story is identical to what it was in 1996. We got the exact same movie. The only difference is we got a bunch of characters who were just jokers the entire movie. There was absolutely no peril. There was no weight. There was no purpose to any of it. And in the end, all we got was just, a few explosions, a very, very weird Godzilla-type alien thing, and a whole lot of questions. A whole lot of just illogical, absolutely ridiculous plot pieces. If you can even call it plot. At this point, I'm not even sure I can. This movie is a mess. It is an absolute mess. And today's generation, they might enjoy it. There might even be people who saw the original and watched this and said, man, that is actually a really good sequel. But the simple reality is that this is a terrible movie for the time we live in, where we're actually seeing blockbusters that are getting better in terms of plot, and not just making it about, oh, this is all the spectacle we can throw at you. They're actually bringing some meaning to it. They're bringing some new social commentary to it. But in this one, all they did was they threw threw some new effects at you, and even the effects are not that great. Threw some new effects at you, a couple of what they thought were cool scenes, but in the end, all it is just a garbage movie, and I don't say that lightly. I'm usually one to find something redeeming about a movie, but this one, there is very little that is redeeming about this movie, aside from a few quips that they have, and the African dictator guy being kind of badass, but the rest of it is just a nightmare. It is laughably bad. That's why I give it 3 out of 10 stars. It is a really bad movie, and one of the worst I've seen in a long time on a big budget scale. So, Independence Day Resurgence, I definitely do not recommend it to anyone at all, but I'm sure people are going to go see it anyway, and they're going to disagree with me. So if you do disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, stay away from this movie. You're going to save yourself $10. Go see something fun like Captain America again. So that's my review of Independence Day Resurgence, and I'll see you next time on Gripe. Bye.